Donor benefits and charitable gift planning. Absolutely so. Here's number one, the personal satisfaction. The personal satisfaction. Let me start with this story. When I worked at IU Foundation, Herman B. Wells was alive. Oh my goodness. You know, it was just such a time. I'm just so lucky to have been there at that time. But I'll tell you a story. I got a call from a woman in Fort Wayne. Go up to her house. She lives in a beautiful woodland area. She's an artist. Her house is filled with her own art. She says, I'm showing down at the gallery. Here's her story. And to be in fundraising, you just hear the most wonderful stories all the time you can imagine. And here's her story. She went to the Heron School of Art during the Depression. I said, how'd that work with your folks to tell them you were going to go to art school in the Depression? Now, if you watch the American Experience or Masters on Disney, he used a lot of women in animation. He just never promoted them. There were jobs for artists. So she went, in her second year, she says, I'm going to have to drop out. I have no money. For some unknown reason, IU gave her 100 stinking bucks, which allowed her to stay at Heron for an entire semester. The next year, they gave her another $100. We're sitting in her beautiful, she said, I've lived the life I dreamed of. I've had the career I wanted. It's been, I want to do for somebody what IU did for me. So this was years and years and years ago. She put $50,000 into a life income plan, best for older people, been around since 1831, called a charitable gift annuity. So it meant when she gave IU Foundation $50,000, she got an income stream for the rest of her life that exceeded market rates. Oh, they exceed CD rates like mad. I mean, really, but best for older people. One or two annuitants. Anyway, she had insured income off that $50,000 for the rest of her life, and when she passed, it became a scholarship for a Heron student, probably a woman. I mean, that is it's part of a diversified portfolio. With these charitable gift annuities, you never renegotiate the rate. You never lose half of the income when your spouse dies. You know, all those things happen with Social Security and CDs. It is the most popular gift plan in America behind bequests because religious organizations did it forever. And that's a darn good CD equivalency for everybody because you can do it for as little as $10,000. It used to be $5,000, now it's $10,000. That's small change in the investment world to get return and know at the end of your life something's going to be left for a favorite charity, and it can be for one or two people. So stories like that are absolutely common. I want to do for somebody what somebody did for me. That $50,000, that's far more than $200, isn't it? Even if you stepped it up for today's term. All right, what else happens with donor benefits? Well, I am all about income tax breaks, and you should be too. We're going to talk about a plan at the end that actually lets people 70 and a half or over avoid being taxed on some income from an IRA. Oh boy, there's actually some ideas about it, but reduced income tax, that's what people ought to be thinking about. Is there a charitable plan that I can do or my parents can do, because I see some young people in there, or my parents can do? Has my mom been a volunteer at the hospital for years? Does my dad go down to the animal shelter once a week? My dad was 46 years the choir director at his church in Syracuse, Indiana. My stepmom was 40 years the public librarian in Syracuse, Indiana. I went to their second estate planning meeting. It was the heir who said, hey Dad, want to leave something to the church? What do you think he said? And stepmom piped right up, I want to leave something to the library. I mean, it's a simple question. 46 years, 40 years. That's public service and then some. You know, they had opera tickets down here, and I could never convince my dad I could switch his opera tickets for another night. And there were a few times that he left the opera at 11 o'clock on Saturday night to drive 4 hours back to Syracuse for church. I kept saying I could change the date of the tickets. I can't. Never believe it. Never. I'm his job. All right, number 2 is what everybody's doing. Do I have any property that has appreciation? What would that be? It might be rental property. It might be investment property. It might be a farm. It might be stock. Is there something that's appreciated and I'm thinking, gee whiz, I'd like to diversify that some, but if I go to the market, I have to pay those strata capital gains, I lose a chunk, state and federal, I'm not gonna do it. There is a way. When I worked at IU Foundation, the capital gains tax rate was 28%. We had people call us to say, can I use my highly appreciated stock in this arrangement? How does that work? How does that work? Well, I'll give you a good example of it. We live in a town with rental landlords, even though they're becoming fewer and far between. That's just very, very true. So I was at IU Foundation. A guy comes down the hall, never met him before, Jack, this is decades ago. He says, well, I'm going to give IU $200,000. That's a lot of money. And a lot of people would say, well, Jack, thank you so much. Sign this form. How do you want your gift listed? We'll invite you to everything till kingdom come. Right? That's what I said. Here's what I say to people when they come down. This is really the secret of my career. I said, Jack, that is so generous. That's so fantastic. I have never met you. My job is to make sure your gift is the smartest one for you. Hey, that's a thought. Could there be smarter ways to give? I said, I've never met you before. Jack, are you thinking of selling or disposing of any assets in the next few years? Hey, that is a very legitimate question. Are you thinking of selling or disposing of any assets in the next couple of years? He said, funny you should say that. I'm 71, retired military. I live in D.C. My investment of choice, rental property. The wife said last year, get out of the rental property. I'm sick of being a landlord. I want to travel. I said, Jack, in this office, the marital mandate is always rises to the top. I never met his wife. And this story is just so amazing. I never met her. So I said, Jack, you have all those rental properties. You need to get rid of them. Here's what he did. The avoidance of additional tax on long term. I never saw his portfolio. Why should I? I'm a fundraiser. But he deeded one of those pieces of property, had no debt on it, to a charitable major trust that paid 5% income to he and his wife for life. And every year the trustee revalued the portfolio, so if the market went up, their 5% was against a higher balance for a year, yeah. If it went down, oh well, you and everybody else. They got some income tax deductions, and they paid no capital gains, yet the trust is funded with the full fair market value of the property. Now that's not really true. For the tape, since it's on tape, he paid capital gains incrementally over time as part of the character of the annual income. Who cares? But he didn't lose 28%, 30%, 35% on the front end. He never lost that. So he always made more income. So fantastic. He deeded the property itself because that's the only way he could avoid capital gains. If he sold it, sorry, Jack, you're paying it. Sorry, got to us too late. The devil is in the details, says this former IRS agent. Yeah, devil is in the details. The details can just kick you if you aren't careful about it. Okay, Jack comes back to Bloomington the next year, comes right down the hall, sits down and says, oh, that income tax deduction I got. Now, when he deeded that property, he didn't get to deduct the whole thing because he and his wife get 5% income for the rest of their lives. So they, he deducted a good chunk, well over 50%, but he didn't deduct it all because he has the right to receive income. So that's not a charitable gift. So he said, but that actuarial income I got last year, I kept all my military retirement pay. I just sat back because Jack's going to do his cultivation on his next gift. He says, my wife loves getting income from that trust because the reason my units were so highly appreciated, I never spent any of the rental income. I appreciated the units. I said, Jack, you can do it again. All right, in 5 years, he deeded 3 pieces of highly appreciated property. Now he was in a trust, getting 5% income each year, tax deductions. He made 3 different distributions in 5 years. He got 3 different income tax breaks. And he comes back to campus, and we're just old chums. And he says, you know when I met you the first time, and I said I was giving IU $200,000, my new number is $1 million, because you showed me how. It fit for his needs. We had to talk about his daughter, that we went through that, their psychology and all that. And I said to him, you get to divide up $1 million at IU, where is this going? 100,000 ROTC scholarship, the only one I ever saw in 11 and a half years, Reserve Officer Training Corps. But then he burst into tears. He said, I met my wife in the marching band, all my friends. It was the best people ever. So he endowed a $100,000 Marching 100 scholarship. And I do believe Jack's name is on one of the practice rooms at the new March 100 facility. Personal satisfaction? Solving problems? Now he's not a landlord for those 3 units. He's getting a check, wife's happy. Income tax breaks, keeping his military retirement plan, less stress. No capital gains, kicked out. I mean, it was just fantastic. That's why that one's so big. Can I do it with a farm? Second story, this woman, Peggy, lived in a town not that far from us. She was so upset, this is decades ago. Her son was leaving his safe job for the state of Indiana and working for himself on, wait for it, the World Wide Web. She was so upset. She just knew it was going to be a terrible idea because it was brand new. So she comes to us and she says, well, I have some farms. And she says, I'm going to deed, he's my only child, he's married, they're going to come to me for money. Things are going to blow up, I know it. So I went in to deed one of these farms into a trust. You pay him as much income as you can so he doesn't ask me for so much. So, I mean, it worked for, she got an income tax deduction. She started paying, her son got a source of income. She had every reason to do that. Later, she had a lot, I mean, this is all real life stuff. She had a lot on a lake outside of Columbus. And her husband had sold the lots, but nobody knew the term development at the time. So the owner of the developer of the lot said, excuse me, I'm sorry, why don't I just give you a lot as your payment? So her basis is basically zero, basically. So they were always going to build out there, he dies. Now it's a cost to her, she has to have it mowed every year, she pays property taxes, she has to put the dock in and out, it's a hassle. She gets a letter one day in the mail from somebody in Carmel. My wife's an interior decorator. She decorated a house on that lake. She just loves it. There's nothing for sale, but you have a lot. Can we buy it? Here's our cash price. She goes to her attorney who writes the prospective buyer and says, got your letter, maybe donating it into a charitable plan, talking to my attorney more later, because she's saying, I'm not paying capital gains. And she puts that lot into a trust for herself. And we sell it without a seller's commission and everything. I mean, opportunity knocks. These are just ways that she'd done it once, so she repeated the experience except for her. So that really is just huge. All right, we'll talk about retirement plans later. Here's the last one I want to talk about. Income tax deduction with retained life estate or term of years. This should be used always. If you're a church goer, go up to your minister, your pastor, your rabbi the next time and say, have you ever had a widow or widower come in and say, someday you're going to get my home, my farm, or hardly ever vacation home, but my home or a farm, home most likely, but when I die. All right, have you, because there is a gift plan. I'll tell you the story. I went up to Coldwater, Michigan last year. I've gone several times for the Community Foundation. And I did a session with a guy who was like 90, 92, grieving because his wife had fallen down the stairs going into the garage. He found her at the bottom of the floor, gone. 4 years ago, and it's just ripping his heart apart. I should have been there, you know, all that stuff you do. So he's upset. So he says in our discussion, because we're just kicking around ideas, he says, well, when I pass away, the Community Foundation is going to get my house. And I said, well, why would you wait to do that? Because if here he is 90, 92, I mean 90, he's, you know, his actuarial lifespan in his house looks really small and the charitable portion looks really big. That couldn't be better. And it's the simplest gift in the world, and he ended up doing it. All he had to do was deed his property. He said, I'm deeding it to the charity, and here's the legal description, look just like the one he got. But at the bottom it says, but I reserve the right to live there for the rest of my life. Retained life estate. with a vacation home, worked with a couple who had a home in Arizona that both their kids said, we don't want. The husband dies, she only drives out there 3 more years. She could have done the same thing. Here, charity, I'll give it to you. It's got to be a big charity because a small charity would be scared to death. But a community foundation can handle any of these transactions for any small charity. But don't go to a small charity and say, can I deed you real estate? Oh my, don't even do that. They'll be scared to death. So she could have done the same thing. Here, I'll deed you my property in Arizona that my children both said they do not want. But you don't get it, charity, until this date 3 years down the pipe. They pick it. Big income tax deduction. And the other reason that's so great, that story I just told about Louise with Arizona property, and she and her husband had pledged $1 million for a chair in urology at the School of Medicine, so that would have counted towards it. Hooray! Wouldn't have changed anything in her life. But when you die without estate property, only Arizona can transfer its own property. Indiana cannot say, I'm going to write a deed, good news. No. Only Arizona. So if you have Arizona property or Michigan property or Colorado property or Florida property, but you're a resident of Indiana, when you pass away, you have to open a very small estate matter there just to transfer that real estate. Now Louise doesn't have to do that. Is she stuck? Can she not go to a nursing home? No, she can't. She can't. There's a way to address it all. But it's personal residence, vacation home, or farm. That's it. Can't do it for commercial property. Can't do it for rental landlord. Can't do it. But that is unbelievable. Best for older people, always. Because older people kind of know what they're going to do with their real estate. Young people should never do that because you want flexibility. Just met with a couple in a county here in Indiana, and they had been advised, they were 57 and 58 with 3 young adult children, to irrevocably transfer their home into a Charitable trust. I said, I wouldn't do that. You're 57 and 58. That's your castle. I mean, that's your equity. That's your, where you can harbor your kids. I said, I wouldn't do that. Flexibility, ethics. We are Hoosiers after all. So that last one, if you're a religious person and you're part of, just ask the religious leader, has that happened? And you could say, if they're older, you don't have to wait. That income tax deduction is hugely popular. Remember, Jack said, I kept all my military retirement pay. What's wrong with that? Instead of dying and you didn't need the deduction anyway. So that's big. All right, we don't really need to talk about this, Paige, because gift and estate tax savings just doesn't matter like it used to. Here's what we care about. Increased lifetime income. Oh boy, that's what we care about. Again, that charitable gift annuity, been around since 1831. Yale University. It's quite a story. And then the American Bible College. But charities have been very late to do this, but they are perfect for older people. Let me tell you my story. When I was at IU Foundation, got a call from a stockbroker in LA. Only child, no siblings, no wife, no children. He's helping to support mom and dad back in the Midwest, 83 and 84. He's already transferred his highly appreciated stock to IU Foundation and an Ohio University. He's already transferred the stock, always talk, and charities often know more about this than anybody else. Why go to an attorney and let them charge you for doing research when you can go down to a charity, a big charity, and ask all these questions and get numbers? It doesn't make any sense. So he calls me and he asks me this question. There can be 1 or 2 annuitants on a charitable gift annuity. It's perfect for husband and wife. It's perfect for husband and husband, wife and wife. It's perfect for it's perfect for siblings. Do it a lot. I've even had people do it for a housekeeper because she was so worried that the housekeeper would, if she settled a sum on her, she'd give it all away to her kids. That's why she did that. It's a pretty good idea if you know you're going to give it up to your kids. She was a poor woman, so there we go. Anyway, so the stockbroker says, if I make only my mom the IU grad, the only annuitant, don't add dad to that IU contract, won't I get a higher income tax deduction? Well, the answer is yes, because there's only one person to pay out versus 2. That's right. I said, well, that answer is yes, but who cares about that? Don't do that. put both of them on it, because heaven forbid, if one should die next year, the survivors lost income off $50,000. I said, you only get to take an income tax deduction once, but income's forever. Actuarially, people with gift annuities outlive actuarial life expectancy by 2.4 years or more. It is so interesting, but they've studied it and researched it. Unbelievable. So the son says, okay, I'll make both of them annuitants. That's the right question. Ethics carry the day. So he does that. Now, for the videotape, the rates have gone down. They get adjusted every year on July 1. They have a group of actuarials, because there are these rates out there that are suggested or recommended. I call them maximum, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But they are on the internet. You can go to the American Council, C-O-U-N-C-I-L, on gift annuities, and they have a 1-life table and a 2-life table. If you do an annuity and there's only one beneficiary, here's the rates based on this age, and if you're got 2 people, here it is. Now, if you're within 6 months of your next birthday, you already have it. Okay, so actuarially, 6 months within the next birthday, you're at that age right now. So a lot of people like to do it. So he ends up doing it. Now, the rates have changed. The numbers I'm going to share with you, you will not replicate in today's economy, because we've gone through a lot of things since he was around. But here's what happened. He gave $100,000, 50 to IU, 50 to Ohio, right? 100,000. Mom and dad, 83 and 84, at that time, wait for it, got 9%, $9,000 a year. He said to me, 9,000 they don't have to call and ask me for. Hey, that's a win. Because son was the donor, but the contract was based on an 83 and 84-year-old. Out of the $100,000 stock, the son deducted $75,000. I mean, if you're supporting mom and dad, this is so much smarter than writing them a check. If you have 10,000, this is so much smarter. And the son said to me, he said, this is the most amazing thing. $75,000 deduction, mom and dad get $9,000 a year. But here's why he really did. He let mom and dad each pick the ultimate use of the gift annuity at their university. He said, you're the best parents ever. I'm paying tribute to you while you're still alive to know it. That is an awesome story. And he also said, now, that's income I don't have to say, right? It's a winner. Charitable gift annuities, the contract's a page and a half. It's a promissory note. That's all it is. A trust is many pages that have provisions that sound very confusing. And you have to find a trustee and their fees and costs. OMGG, you know? Yes, the community foundation does gift annuities for smaller charities in town. It's a liability instrument, so don't go into the Pantry 279, don't go into the History Center, don't do that, but somebody can fund a gift annuity at the community foundation and say, when I'm gone, the History Center gets what's left. That's how it works. You pick where it's going to go. All right, charitable remainder trust, more complex. We talked about that with Jack and those real estate properties. You know, got to have $500,000 to do a charitable remainder trust, because you have to share the risk and diversify. There's a portfolio, and as I said, there's a trustee and fees and expenses. But there's a kind of trust, the unit trust, and it's all the rage, because again, once a year, it's revalued on the market, and my 5% is applied against a new balance. Here's my story. Oh, it's nice. All right. Joan and Brooks Fortune, both gone, but if you go to the Indianapolis Symphony, you'll see their name, and they were IU donors. Okay. These charitable remainder trusts were authorized in, I think, 73. I could be right, 71 or 73. Joan's on the IU Foundation board. They're doing a capital campaign. If you're a board member, you have to give. If insiders don't give, why would outsiders ever consider it? She knows they're coming for us, Brooks. What are we going to do? She said, oh, there's that newfangled trust thing. Let's try one of those. So she has some highly appreciated stock, $200,000. And she transfers it directly to the trustee. It's Joan and Brooks, 5% per life. Okay, year one, it earns 8%. What happens? Joan and Brooks get their 5%, give us our $10,000. Trustee takes a fee. The other 2% goes back into the principal. So the next year, it's worth more. Or let's fast forward. They do this in 75, maybe 73. Fast forward. The year 2000, it's worth $1.2 million. They're getting 5% of that every single year. All right, a year or two later, Joan dies. Brooke's still alive. He marries Wanda. They live in Florida. By the time Brooks dies, it's worth $2 million because of the reinvestment of excess income. And those were glory days, Hank Greenspan, all those things. It was a different time. It won't be in our lifetime. Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. But IU recognized them as a $2 million gift. And what they said to me was, what we love about this is by the time Brooks died, they're getting $100,000 from that same trust that they funded decades ago for $200,000. I mean, the trust that keeps on paying. It was unbelievable. But Brooks said, what I love about this is that it doesn't take anything of what I can leave the kids in my inheritance. It doesn't sacrifice any of that. It's outside that. So those trusts can be just marvelous if you have the right assets. And none of these are funded with cash. In Charitable Gift Planning, we talk assets all the time. The only thing people really fund with cash is charitable gift annuities. They have a CD that becomes mature. And those of you who are older, run, not walk to the community foundation if you have a CD that's maturing and say, if I took a rate, what would the rate be? Now, here's something about gift annuities. And I know this sounds a little, you can say, hey, I'm going to fund it now. I'm an older person. I'm going to fund it now. Pay me income. The rate won't look as sweet as it is. Here's how it really looks sweet. Here, Community Foundation, here's my $10,000. Don't pay me and the husband income for 3 or 4 years. When you defer, if you can say, I can live without that income for a period of time, it means your rate 4 years down the pike is so much nicer than the one today. And it means your income tax deduction is bigger too, because you said, Charity, you got 4 years to make it grow before I come after you for income. So that's where the magic is those deferred. And you can't see that if you go to the website. You have to say to the Community Foundation, my birthday is, my spouse's birthday is, if I did $10,000, what happens if I got income right away? What happens if I defer 2 years? What if I defer 4 years? All that stuff. So that's what I learned at the IRS. Numbers are very compelling. All right, supplemental retirement income. That's what that deferred gift annuity is. It says, I'm working right now. I'm not in my 50s, but if I were, people in their 50s are doing that to say, I want to have additional sources of retirement income. And because I could wait for retirement income, I'm wise to fund it now and defer until that time. It also leaves nice guaranteed income for the partner. My husband, former banker, bookkeeper extraordinaire, he should be scared witless about leaving me any authority in what we have if something should predecease it. By the way, I went to an estate planning meeting a number of years ago, and the attorneys were all upset. Here's a good piece of advice, because people were dying without sharing passwords, and they can't get into any accounts. If Facebook won't let you into the account of your deceased child, what's the likelihood a brokerage house will? So they said, write down your passwords. Don't keep them all on the computer. Tell somebody where it is. Otherwise, you may lose out on assets. You really should make a claim if you have life insurance. Don't wait for them to notify you. That could be a fool's errand. So do that. So I get home and say to my husband, passwords, we've got to have all that. I don't know any of the passwords. My husband says, the kids know all of them. I'm like, how could you? I know none of them. And the kids know all of them. Thank you. Thank you. So he should be scared a lot. But that supplemental income, deferred gift annuities are just a whale of a great, when somebody gets a severance package, or sometimes they're lucky and the parents give them $10,000 or $15,000. Hey, whenever it is, maybe I can do a gift annuity and defer when it's going to pay me income and have some of that waiting for me at the end. All right, asset management, diversification, that's worth a lot. Jack with the rental property, managing it all himself, reinvesting all of it in. Now he has a portfolio that someone else says, here's the statement, here's the composition, here's the revaluation, he really liked that part of it. And here's the other story I'll tell about diversification. My friend Russ House raised money for Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin. He talked about this guy who had sold some invention to Coca-Cola and got in return a big, massive Coca-Cola stock. And that guy said, it's not good to only own so much Coca-Cola stock. So he did one of those Charitable trusts back here, Charitable Trust, and put some of that after he waited a year and a day, so he'd held it a year and a day, long term, he started putting it into a trust so he could get a mutual fund and not have to go through capital gains taxes to achieve asset management diversification. That's really a big deal. And financial support, my gosh, we've talked about that endlessly. All right, so what are some, any questions so far? Because I talked so fast. And all questions are good. Any questions? Okay, all things are possible. All right, so what are some of the simpler kinds of gifts? Because I'm all about simple. I'm an attorney. I do continuing education for advisors all over the place. I just went to Topeka, Kansas and did that. And I never talk about the tax code. I talk about simpler gifts because I just want attorneys and financial planners to say, hey, there's some good ideas here that are during life instead of, well, kick it down the road and put it in your will so I don't have to think about it anymore. You know, this works much better for people. Okay, bequest, it really is magic language. And if you love a charity, go just call them up or look online and say, what is your legal name? Because they may have a DBA name, doing business as, and they may have a real name. Okay, here's my great story. I've been at the foundation 7 years before I finally got one of the board members to give me just the extract of his language. Because can we fulfill your intent? That's a good one. Let us see the extract so we know what if it looks copacetic on the state university spectrum. That board member had been on the board 7 years. His bequest said University of Indiana. I said to him, that's in Indiana, Pennsylvania. You've been on the board, what 7 years? 7 years? So I always say to charity, print your name, don't assume anybody knows anything. Print it in your marketing, here's the language, here's what to do, whatever. So it really is magic language. Here's what else magic language is. If you have a charitable intent with the bequest, and honestly, for those of us who have children, for those of us that, I have retirement plans, never will I include charity in my will or trust, because everything under my will or trust, our house, our car, you know, whatever, the kids get tax-free. So it's kind of a crazy idea to put charity as a bequest in your will if you have children. If you don't have children, or after the child, if you only have one child and say, oh, heaven forbid something happens to my one child, then there are reasons to do it. But for those of us with children and retirement plans, it's much smarter for me to do something with my retirement plan, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But the magic language is important. Here's one of my favorite bequest languages that really failed the mark. Scholarships for students bearing my name in the School of Nursing. So the kids had to have the donor's name to get scholarships for students bearing my name in the school. We all know what she meant. She meant scholarships for students in the School of Nursing, such scholarship fund to bear my name, but that's not what it said. Okay, so it can really be a problem. So I say, if you do have a bequest, hey, just send that one paragraph to the charity. Can you work with this? If it's for endowment, you better say that. Otherwise it won't go to endowment. They'll spend it right up. If it's for endowment, and the Community Foundation has endowment funds for many local charities. Has one for you, has one for Middle Way House, has many. They're the community banker for nonprofits. That's what they do. All right, so the bequest and a valid will or trust, that's a lot of people have decided they don't need to do wills or trusts because the tax laws are so favorable. That's a bad idea, because you don't know what will happen. There are other documents, powers of attorney. When my parents failed, you know, it was a struggle up the mountain to get my dad to give a power of attorney, and he wasn't doing any of his business work, it was a real struggle. So you don't want to wait until you're feeling cantankerous, particularly if you have dementia. That just doesn't work for the family good. So planning when you're a little bit more copacetic really works. All right, here's what I really love. Beneficial designations of a percentage of part or all of one or more retirement plan assets. Revocable, flexible, all ages can do it. Okay, for those of us in this town who are lucky enough to have a retirement plan, this is the way to give to charity. Because retirement plans and life insurance, those don't pass per your will or trust. No, no. When you went in for the first day for your job and signed that contract and says, if I kick, here's where my fund goes. It's a contract. And if any of you have an ex and have retirement plans, check that, because it's a contract. It doesn't say you have to be married to get it. Exes get retirement plans and life insurance from people who don't go and check that. So if you've ever been married before, check that. See what it says. There's a primary beneficiary. Who's the primary beneficiary of my retirement plans? My husband, Jeff Davidson, who I met at age 18 at my work-study job at Woodburn Hall. Thank you, government. What a gift. So Jeff's my primary. But our secondary, would it be our 3 kids? Well, it could be our 3 kids, but here's what it says first. It says 5% to XYZ charity, 5% TIU and FIU, of course, for me. You know, it says percentages to different charities, and then it says what's left in percentages to the kids. Now, why would I do that? Because retirement plans are untaxed compensation. So when my kids get it, they pay federal income tax and they pay state income tax. And here's my other piece of advice for you. We have 3 adult children, and we've told them this for years. Repeat after me, stretch out. Because when you and your spouse kick and those kids get your retirement plans, they're going to take a lump sum distribution. They're going to take it all in one year and pay the most tax. Whereas really they should say stretch it out. Now you can take 10 years, used to be the kid's life, Congress changes. Now they have 10 years to withdraw. Say to your kids, you'll need it every one of those 10 years. Take 1/10 every 10 years. Do that. You'll be gone. They will take all of it as a lump sum. So stretch out, give them good directions, because that's a very good thing to do. But percentages to one or more charity. Why would I do that? Well, it's going to be taxed to my kids. That's number one. Anything that comes out to charity doesn't pay any of those taxes. So it's smart, smart, smart. I can change it every day of my life. I can go online and change it. Why would I do percentages? Because the plan's going to rock and roll. It's going to go up, it's going to go down. And I know the percentage I want to give. I can take care of every charity I care about in this same way. This is the plan. And here's my story about that. My oldest child, when she was 22 and got a full-time job at IUPUI, she was married, called her dad, maybe she was 23, said, how do I fill out my beneficiary designations of my retirement plan and life insurance? I said, well, you can put 99% your fabulous husband, Henry, and you could put 1% the Marion County Humane Society, where you got the first of your 2 rescued pit bulls. I said, do you think Henry can live without 1%? She said, I think he could. I mean, if you have a kid who did the Riley Dance Marathon, who's built one of those habitat houses, this is such a good suggestion. They have no cash. But this is, when I kick 2% to whatever, I mean, really, it's fantastic. One of the on-air producers, Bennett, at WTIU decades ago, her brother was on mission work for their Mormon church, and she had done that too. I said, Bennett, if you could support the mission work of your Mormon church, would you? She said, yeah, but I have nothing. I said, you have a TIAA craft plan down the hall. You can go down and put a percentage to your church and then the rest to your family, whatever, and you're a planned gift donor. I said, for heaven's sakes, give something to WTIU since they funded it for you. Give them something, give them some love. But it's such a great thing to suggest. Now, do a lot of people have retirement plans? Not as much. You know, not as much, but for people who do, these are exceptional ways to leave a gift. And if you spend it out, if you need the whole thing, oh well. Oh well. At least you tried, you had good intention. That's the best one ever, if you have a retirement plan. All right, I can give life insurance, but life insurance isn't taxed to your family either. So, but it's on my slide because life insurance used to be a huge big commodity, not so much anymore. People went into the market. But if people have policies, they can give those to charities, depending on the kind of policy. There might be some tax breaks about it, but it's not taxed to the family. So think about that. My dad's life insurance paid for his funeral. It came in mighty handy, I must say. It really helped. All right, we've already talked about appreciated stock or real estate. We talked about Jack and all that. We've talked about the gift of real property subject to life, estate, or term of years. We've talked about that. Simple, simple gift. I do it by deed. Oh, so simple. And only people in their mid-70s should even think about it. Because in your mid-70s, you kind of have a feeling where you're going to be. But the older you are, the better the deal. Here's something cool. TOD, transfer on death, or POD, payable on death. The government wants to simplify estates, get out of the estate planning business, make it much easier. So they're simplifying, streamlining lots of things. This is one of those things. You could go down to your bank if you were a single person. You'd only do this if you were a single person. If you were a single person, you could go down and say, fill out a form at the bank and say, when I die, transfer on death to a favorite charity, payable on death to a favorite charity. In some states, they're letting that be used for some values of real estate. It's just getting simpler and simpler, but it just means, here it goes, transfer on death. Let's get going. And by the way, let me say something about this gift of real property, in the subject to life estate, the one before. Here's what happens. You know, I said go to your place of worship because that's just the most likely place someone's come up and said, you're going to get my home or farm to the religious leader. That just happens all the time. But here's what happens. If she instead dies and leaves that in her estate to the charity, then the estate is open. It has to maintain that property. It has to pay the heat. It has to mow the lawn. It has to do all that. With term of years, the day that person passes away, the charity goes in and unlocks the door because they've been deeded the property. It was subject to their life estate. They're gone. So it goes to the charity like immediately. That is fantastic. That is a fantastic idea that your neighbors don't hate you because you've got an unoccupied property unloved. No question. So I want to mention that too. It's just better. All right. Here's why government savings bonds are on here. This is a cool story. About, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago, the government came out and said, you no longer can go to the bank and buy a savings bond. I used to give those as high school graduation gifts all the time, thinking they wouldn't be as quick to cash them in. Really, it was my fave constantly. Well, they don't do that anymore. You have to write in. You can still get them, you know, all those things. And those of us who became enamored of Turner Classic Movies during COVID, many movies at the bottom say, buy your war bonds in this theater. I mean, that was a big deal in those old films, you know, lots of activity. So, but they said in that same story 8 or 9 years ago, however long it was, there was $6 billion in matured unredeemed savings bonds in the U.S. And you can be darn sure a bunch of them's here in the Midwest. Yes. I think the Midwest would be pretty, we lead the country in charitable giving, so, and if there's anything Midwesterners take as the motto, it's a rainy day is a coming. We all believe that. So we're all socking it away. So if that's you, if you have some of those savings bonds and you're like, gee, what do I do with those? Here's 3 things you could do. You can you walk down and give them to the charity? No. They're ordinary income. They're like salary. No, you can't do that. You can cash them in, give those proceeds to your favorite charity. ID what? If you're older, you can cash them in, fund a gift annuity for you and somebody else, turn it into income first. Yay. Or number 3, you can say in your estate plan, I bequeath them to these nonprofits in these areas, in these percentages. So there are many choices with savings bonds. And I say that because ask your mom and dad, do you still have savings bonds around it that aren't paying you in? We could do some things like you wanted to make that gift to your favorite charity, we could actually do that. And gifts other than cash. Yeah, that's right. All right, here's the last topic we're really going to talk about today. The IRA charitable rollover. This is huge. An IRA is just what you think, an IRA. This got passed for the first time in 2008 with George W. Bush. And then it was in 2 years increments, it got renewed. Now it's permanent, And it says that if you're 70 and a half or older, now I know what you're gonna say, hey, those rules got changed on retirement plans, I don't have to pull them out till I'm 72. That's right. The IRA charitable rollover says if you're 70 and a half. So it's earlier, okay? I know there's a discrepancy, but it's on purpose, okay? If you're 70 and a half or older, here's what you can do. Don't get your required minimum distribution. Don't get your annual check from your retirement plan. Instead, pick up the phone and say to your plan administrator, or do it online, however you do it, hey, this year I want you to send $5,000 to the History Center and $5,000 to the public library and $5,000 to the food bank. And it comes directly from the plan administrator, that IRA, to the public charity. If that happens, in my example, you don't get taxed on the $15,000 at all, and it counts towards your required minimum distribution. All right? Do you get to deduct it? Don't be greedy. Not including it is better all day long than not including it in your income at all. Beats the heck out of a deduction at 20% bracket. Not including 100% is better than deducting 20%, right? Whatever your bracket is. So it is incredible. This has become so popular that some brokerage houses, I was just talking to somebody at early voting about this, be a voter, at early voting. Her brokerage house gives her a checking account for her IRA, and she writes checks to charities out of that, and at the end of the year they sit down, because the plan administrator says, now the rental for the church for your daughter's wedding, that's not a charitable gift, that's rental, and your Rotary dues, that's not a charitable gift, that's dues. So they go through and decide what they can exclude. Wildly popular. 70 and a half or older, the key is that it has to come from the plan administrator to the public charity, not through you. That is the key. All right, if you look at this slide, oh my goodness, the second paragraph is sensational. And here's my story about this. I was doing some estate planning with an older lady. She had farms. Her will says the same thing my will says. When I die, I give all my property to my beloved spouse, and if he's gone in equal shares to our 3 children, per stirpes means their kids get it if something happens, knock on wood, to one of them. So my will really never change. Really never change. It's the simplest will. It's always said exactly the same thing, because the kids get it tax-free. Why not? That's it, no question about it. But I was sitting with a lady who said, I've got the farms are going to the kids, I got the bank accounts, the farm equipment, you know how valuable that is, going to the kids, whatever. She said, I have this IRA, I really have never used it. I'm annoyed every year that I have to take the RMD and put it at required minimum distribution, put it in my income taxes. I'm kind of annoyed about it, whatever. Guess what? She had a dream. She wanted to build a playground at a preschool. And if you do it with a bequest, oh, so sorry, you passed away, you didn't get to see it. Here's what she can do. She can get out $100,000. It could be my RMD, but up to 100. Up to 100 if I'm 70 and a half. She can give up to $100,000 every single year and not be taxed on it. And watch that playground be built during her lifetime. Giving assets her kids did not need, because they have farms, farm equipment, bank accounts. That is a great, great story. If a husband and wife have IRAs, they can each give up to $100,000 every year. It's not a one-time only. Can you believe that? It's just astonishing to think that that's a provision in this act, and very few people think about it, because it's the way to see your largesse come to fruition. A very, very, very cool plan. They're tinkering it right now. They're going to improve it. They may allow you to get up to $50,000 out of your IRA and fund a charitable gift annuity, or put that 50 into a charitable trust. So they are talking about, it's making its way through Congress. They are not opposed to it. letting you put 50,000 from an IRA into a life income plan first. That would be sweet, sweet, sweet. No sweet, no doubt about it. All right, before I conclude, any questions? I know it seems like a lot, but here's the takeaway from this. If I have assets as I age, if I have needs for saving for retirement, simplifying my life, not owning out-of-state assets, diversifying my portfolio, maybe I should think about a charitable plan. Maybe I can accomplish my goals within a charitable plan and think about that and explore that further. I'm happy to help you explore that or have that conversation, or the Community Foundation, or if you like IU, it has to be, IU Foundation, has to be a big charity that knows about this work. But I want to tell you all things are possible, and so I'm going to end with another last story, because this one is so cool. Years ago, I've been so lucky, I've done a lot of things with Indiana Community Foundations, and I was in a community, and the park superintendent was in the audience. And after I got back to Bloomington, he called me, and here's what he said. He said, we are in negotiations, we've written down nothing, with a couple. They have a 184-acre farm on the outside, 154-acre farm on the edge of town. We want to do a county park before our whole county is built up. We put an article in the county newspaper. They came forward. This is the one we're going to do. They've already partitioned. They're going to live in the 20 acres with the farm buildings on the side, and they're going to convey 134 acres to us for the park. All right. So he says, is there a gift conversation there? And that's what we often say in fundraising. Is there a gift conversation? Not is there a gift. Is there a gift conversation? These are weighty ideas. I've had people study on this for up to 7 years before they commit. You know, you have to go back and forth, circumstances, know your numbers, all that. An informed decision is a very, very good thing. So I end up going to this county and sit down. The accountant is there. Neither the accountant nor the attorney had ever done a charitable gift. This area I'm talking about today, this is a specialty area. You know, you wouldn't go to a podiatrist for brain surgery, but they are both doctors. So this is a specialty area, and not a lot of attorneys know about this. I learned everything that I've talked about today. When I started in charitable gift planning, 2 sentences in law school, 3-4 years of law school is what I learned about charitable gift planning. 2 sentences. So I've learned all this from people, from Dewey, from colleagues, from conferences, from all that stuff. You know, going to Reno next week, but via Vincennes on Tuesday. Spend the day in Vincennes. Lots of good philanthropy in Vincennes, no doubt about it. So, so I drive up to this county and I sit down and I say to this couple, again, older people in their early 80s, I said, well, you can sell your farm to the Parks Department. You know they're going to buy it. They want it. That's your prerogative. If you want to do that, you go right ahead. Because that's true. It's part of your choice. I said, however, if you do, and because it's a farm family, you just know their basis is going to be low. You just know, you know, how much appreciation they're going to pay gallon. You just kind of know that. So I said, you could do that, or you could do other things. I looked at him, because I love open-ended questions. I said, are you thinking of naming anything at the park? Now that is the most obvious question, because it's right next door. No matter what name swings on their gate, it's their farm. It's just going to be that way. So they said, well, we're thinking of naming the shelter house. I said, why in the world would you sell this, pay capital gains on all of it, then write a check to the Parks Department? Why would you do that? So here's how it all fell out. They did 4 deeds, because we studied this. Okay, here's deed number 1. Mom and Dad transferred 2% of the undivided fractional interest in that 134 acres they'd already partitioned to the Parks Department for the naming gift of the shelter house. I said, glorious. I said, now you won't get 2% of the money, but you get an income tax deduction for 2% of the money, and you don't pay capital gains on 2% because you gave it to charity. That's a win right there. I did a pre-tax funding of the gift. That's why the title of this program is How to Do Smartly What You Want to Do Already. That's a perfect example. Okay, They're an older couple. All right. Deed number 2, they deeded 15% of the undivided fractional interest in their 134 acres to the local community foundation in return for a 6% fixed for life gift annuity for the 2 of them. I said, you'll never renegotiate this rate? If one of you passes away, the survivor gets the full 6%. You've given something to the community. You can decide where it's going to go after you're gone. It's wonderful. Okay, I asked them, do you have children? 5 children. All right, here's deed number 3. Deed number 3, we deed 30% of the undivided fractional interest in our 134 acres to a charitable trust, paying 5% to our 5 children for 20 years. A charitable trust can be for life or for a term not to exceed 20, and for young people, it's always a term. It's always a term. Got to be older to get some punch out of these numbers. So that's it. So unbelievable. Now the kids are going to get some income. And if you do my math, 2% plus 15% plus 30%, that's 47%. They sold 53% to the parks for cash. They didn't pay capital gains on 2%, on 15%, on 30%. They got an income tax deduction for that. 2% outright, actuarial on the 15 and the 20, and the 30%. Unbelievable. So they paid no capital gains whatsoever on selling 53%. I said to them, we want you to be in the majority and dictate all the sale terms. That's ethics, you know. I'd want to be in that too. The wife leaned over at one point, because all this was brand new. The wife leaned over and said, when my parents died, I inherited quite a bit of farmland. How that would have helped us when we were raising our 5 kids on our farm. Our farm income was $15,000 a year. That's why I worked in county government and my husband drove a school bus. It's the only way you can make it. She was so happy, her kids. And the attorney was very worried because he kept dragging his feet because all this was so foreign. And he called me one day and he said, well, we can't do the 20-year term for the 5 kids because their health prognosis isn't, so one of them won't make it to 20 years. I said, piece of cake. So that trust says, if my son Dan dies, his wife gets his share. If my son Steve dies, his 3 children get his share. If my daughter Dottie dies, her siblings get her share. So everybody said, nobody lost income. It all stayed within the family. All within the family. So all things are possible. It's a very, very good story to think about. Do I have an asset? Do I want to transition? Am I thinking about options? The world of charitable giving is very generous and very attractive. Charitable gift annuities are highly repeated. They are the most repeated gift type in America because people are like, I'm settling my estate, I'm transferring it to higher than market income. I'm just simplifying my whole life. So I am delighted to share this idea with you. It's a great way to support local charities. Yes, you can support out-of-town charities too. I don't mean to not say that, but the local charities here are always so valuable, so needed, like the History Center. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Is it very complicated if the charity is not in the United States?
It is more complicated. It all depends. There may not be the tax breaks because, you know, our publication said, here's the charities that are tax exempt in the United States and where our advantages are. Now, international charities have become much more of interest. So don't rule that out, because they may have established an American office simply to do a plan like that. See what I'm saying? It could, like Doctors Without Borders. Where is their headquarters? It could be in New York or Connecticut. It could be, or Delaware. So I would ask that, will I get tax breaks as a U.S. taxpayer for arrangements benefiting your international charity? That's really the question, because only they can answer, because not all nonprofits are tax exempt. Yeah, you can be nonprofit and not have applied for tax exempt status. So that's not good enough even in the States, but that's a great question. Yes?
You have a card.
Yes, I have a card. Yes, I'd be happy to give you a card. Love to share, love to share. Any other questions? Isn't this pretty kind of like amazing? That's why, when I worked at IU Foundation, I often say in the charitable world, I go fishing. I say it all the time to my colleagues. I go fishing, and that means I have ideas, so if and when, you don't want to manage it, if and when your CDs, if and when, call me, let's talk about that, if and when. So we have people call us. And the last story I will, because I could tell stories all day long, one of the board members called me, and I've known him forever. He said his only question was, can creditors reach the portfolio of a charitable major trust? The answer is no. It's an irrevocable plan. That's a great thing. When I was in Topeka, a guy who runs a trust company says, we're going to push charitable major trust because the kids come in after mom and dad are gone and beg for some of the principal. This helps us that we can't give out more because it's a statutory trust. This is an advantage for us. We're going to start steering more of our clients towards this because it's less painful. So that father said, can creditors reach the principal of a charitable major trust? The answer is no. He said, I have 3 sons. 2 are great with money. The third, if he inherits at dawn, it's gone at dusk. And that's the son with 2 children of his own. I'm terrified he won't support his children. So here's a great maxim for estate planning. If any of you are going through estate planning, treating people equally does not mean treating people the same. That is one of the most freeing statements. Treating people equally does not mean treating people the same. So daddy gives outright to the 2 boys who are so, and the son, the attorney calls twice, we make sure it's egalitarian, equal, whatever. He does 2 transfers into a charitable major trust. He goes to that son and says, son, I've protected you. If you get in trouble again with creditors, they can take the income, they can take it, but the South will rise again. The trust will reinvest, next year it will produce more. You'll never lose the principal, son. And he also said to his son, I want to thank you because it allows me to take care of all my charitable pledges. Oh, let me add this PS, I'm sorry. The PS is, if you are a charitable person, and if you have family, it is a delightful, wonderful thing for you to share your inclinations with them. Because, children, philanthropy is a learned behavior. It has nothing to do with money. Nothing. It's a learned behavior. And if children feel, so, we've said to our children, we're taking care of you, but we're going to give to charity, and we give to it every year. It is no surprise, shock, dismay, or horror. So if it's part of your intention, be honest and have a discussion about it so they don't feel blindsided, because there are children, this is how bizarre estates can be. I did estate planning with a couple, a brother up in Fort Wayne, and he had lived in town with his mother, knew the banker, took her to all of her doctor's appointments, the hair appointments, took her to the grocery store. His older brother lived in New York State. Didn't go, whatever. When she, in her will, she named the local brother as the executor. Of course she did. The older brother said, I'll never speak to my brother again. I'm the older one. It should have been me. So the local Fort Wayne brother lost his mother and his brother at the same time. People get weird when it comes to estate stuff. So just don't assume, just have a good old conversation and make everybody, and here's my advice, don't have the conversation one by your children. They'll never believe what the others say. Have it at family dinner, have it all together, and I had a very difficult sister-in-law. I said, let's have it with her there, because then she can't blindside all of us. She was a very big handful. So have it with everybody, because you have a chance they might hear the same thing. If you do it one-on-one, they never hear the same thing. All right, Lessons for Life. Thank you, Monroe County History Center, for hosting this. Delighted to eat some more lovely refreshments and answer your questions. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Andrea, so much. And thank you.